The chief of the Mossad, 2 generals, and the prime minister. Obviously, it's important. We are the Spy-Fi guys, and this is Munich.
Welcome to the Spy-Fi guys, where we cover spy fact, spy fiction, and everything in between. I'm Zach.
And I'm Christian.
And today we are covering part 1 of Munich, directed by Steven Spielberg, a director you may know, and starring Eric Bana and James Bond himself, Daniel Craig.
Woo!
Did you know that he was in that when you started watching?
I did know this, because once he became the new Bond, I was like, all right, what other movies has this guy been in? And I watched it, I think, because this came out, 2005 or so?
Yeah.
So this is before Casino Royale came out, so I was just trying to give a hint of, all right, how's this guy going to play Bond? And so I did watch this, but I feel like I watched it at 2 a.m., so I don't really remember much from the first time I watched it.
Well, good. Well, then there's more to pick up this time.
Yeah, definitely.
So many years after it came out. So this movie was nominated for Best Picture and 4 other Oscars. So
this and last week's are probably the biggest critically acclaimed films we've ever covered for the podcast.
And they're 2 of the darkest and most depressing. So coincidence? Maybe? Maybe the critics like that stuff. As always, and we have not mentioned this before, but we will be going through the movie and it will be spoiler filled. The movie is now very old. It's now 15 years old. But if you haven't seen it and you don't want to get spoiled, then you should stop listening now.
We'll be waiting for you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so shall we get into the plot summary?
Yes, please.
All right, here's the synopsis. Based on the true story of the Black September aftermath, about the 5 men chosen to eliminate the ones responsible for that fateful day.
So that's from IMDb, and already there's a mistake.
Oh?
The event was not called Black September.
That's true. Yeah, you're
right.
It
did take place in September, and there's a documentary about it called One Day in September.
Mm-hmm.
But Black September was the name of the organization that did it.
That's what I thought. All right, yeah, okay. But they also call them something else in the movie, don't they?
Yeah, they use a few different names, and okay. We will, if it comes up, I will do what I can to help sort it out.
Okay.
So is there anything else you wanted to talk about before we go? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
Let's jump into the analysis of the movie. Take it away.
So we start with refresh my memory. Is it, which of these 2 phrases do you not like? Based on true events or inspired by true events?
I hate inspired by true events.
I hate it. This has our inspired by real events.
It's back. And this movie is ridiculous because it's all, I don't want to say it's all real, but this is history, okay? Especially the Munich Massacre, that's the very beginning. Everybody knows it. It's history. It's a movie about it. Why would you say it's inspired by real events? Just say based on a true story. Oh my goodness.
Well, okay, so I'm going to provide a slight counterpoint to that. I don't know why this is, but I did not know about these events, at least the Munich Massacre, until I saw this movie.
Okay. That's fine. This is history, and it's sort of like.
And I'll be honest, I'm surprised I had not heard about this when I saw when I saw it the first time, and I realized, wow, I've never heard about this, and so this is not, because it's so recent history, like in the grand scheme of things. It's unfortunately not something that's always taught, unless you maybe come from a Hebrew background.
So that's interesting. So I have heard that for people who were alive in 1972. It was a little bit like the JFK assassination, where it was major news around the world, and people would remember where they were when they heard about it.
Okay.
But maybe that's because I have Jews in my family. So if you have no Jews in your family, you may want to ask older people if they remember this. I'd be curious to know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So certainly the image that's in the movie of the guy with the stocking on his head, the terrorist with the stocking on his head, that is famous.
Okay.
And that's like the image of the Munich Massacre that everyone will sort of associate with.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, so we start off with some vocal chanting. I'm like, okay, which I'm like, always for me when movies start with that sort of vocalization, just vague vocal, not specific language. I'm like, okay, I'm not sure where this is going. And then we start with a man who's trying to climb a fence, and there's a group of them who are like all Middle Eastern looking, and they encounter some Americans.
Or at least people who speak English.
True. Well, I mean, from the swagger and from the accent, I kind of assume that they're American athletes.
Yeah, I think one of them even says something like, hey buddy, or hey dude, or something along those lines, which is very American.
And so the Americans assume that the group of people there are also athletes, and they're asking, where are you guys from? What's your event? Realize they don't speak English, but they see that they're trying to climb over this fence. So Americans are, let's help them over the fence.
Yeah, let's help them over. And so this takes place outside of the Olympic Village, as is revealed in the next scene when you have a reporter speaking from Munich, 1972.
Mm-hmm. And so the men have some bags with them. They start to change their clothes. And then we also see that they have AKs in their bag. And they're also speaking Arabic, so we can kind of figure out what their background is.
Mm-hmm.
And so with their guns out, they're opening someone's door and pointing the gun at them. And the guy inside managed to keep the door shut. And from the poster on the wall, you can see that there's a poster with Hebrew letters. So in my mind, that's when I connected. Oh, these are the Israeli athletes.
So you really had no idea what this was about when you started watching it?
Well, I knew it, but I didn't necessarily know what because I don't, like I said, I don't really know too much about this event before I saw the movie the first time.
I mean, that's fine. I was just wondering.
Yeah, so I didn't necessarily know who was breaking into where and what was the deal. So I didn't. Yeah, so for me it was like, all right, trying to pick up whatever clues I could see to figure out, okay, what's going on.
Okay.
Yeah. The men get through the door, and then we cut to this newscast where they talk about how Israelis have been taken hostage. The terrorist group is called Black September, as we said earlier.
Yep. And
then they've made demands for Israel to release 200 Arabs, or the hostages will be killed.
Yes, they also refer to the people they want released as political prisoners.
Right. Not just random Arabs, obviously.
Right, and they also say revolutionaries of the world unite as part of their demand. We also see at this part a shot of the guy with the stocking on his head, and they both do the famous image on the TV, and then they show it on TV while also having an actor pretending to be him on the balcony. And then there's also a shot of an old woman who is later revealed to be Golda Meir in shadow.
Yeah, and actually, so I didn't know who that was, so I had to actually look that up, which was interesting, but we'll talk about that more later. So we also have shots of people around the world watching these newscasts. And so, yeah, like you said, it was a global event, really.
Well, I mean, it takes place at the Olympics. That's the idea. But we also see the media interfering with counterterrorism operations.
So we have news reporters who are talking about how there are security men dressed in athletic uniforms who are going to attempt a siege. And it gets called off because they say that terrorists are watching this exact news feed inside the room.
That actually happens a lot, and not just in Europe. It happens with criminals, is that news media will pick up on what the police or military are doing, and then they watch it. So things haven't changed that much.
So the terrorists demand to be moved with the hostage, and I'm a little fuzzy on some of the details here because, and it's not until later that we get more details about what happened. So, and it's really just you're at this point you're only learning from what the news is telling you, which is interesting. So you're seeing it along with basically the global community. So they're going to be moved to an airport. There's a battle at the airport. There's an explosion in the background, and then we're told that the hostages are safe and that all the terrorists are dead.
Right.
And then we get a counter report saying, no, that's not true, that there were 11 hostages, that 2 were killed in the room, and 9 were killed at the airport.
And so then we see reactions from people around the world. So at first, we saw people in what presumes to be an Arab country, and they're very happy that the terrorists are doing a good job. Then we see the Israeli people being sad that the hostages are dead, but then we also see Arab people being sad that the terrorists are dead, because they had families too who didn't want them to die. And this is the first time that the 9/11 parallels jumped out to me.
Yeah?
So I don't know if you did a lot of reading about the movie, about commentaries about it.
I did a little.
So I remember when it came out, people were saying that it's very, and this becomes clearer later in the movie, that it's not a movie about Operation Wrath of God in response to the Munich Massacre. It's actually a movie about 9/11. And it uses these events as a metaphor for it. And we can talk about this on Spy Fact versus Fiction if you'd like, but a lot of Israeli commentators that I read didn't like it because they're like, it's really not the same struggle at all. But in this case, we get media confusion and we get conflicting reports about what's going on.
Huh. Wow. Okay.
It really jumped out to me when it shows all these people glued to their television sets.
Oh, I can definitely see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just to talk on that briefly, I know Spielberg, when he made this, because this is 2005, so probably made about 2004 or so. This and War of the Worlds were really Spielberg's react to 9/11. Because I watched, there's a good Spielberg documentary out there. I think it's on HBO, where he talks about this and how those two movies are really his reaction to 9/11. And you might not see it as much in War of the Worlds, but there's iconic imagery in there about where Tom Cruise is running and he has all this ash on him and it's ash of other people. Right. And just trying to like brush it off him. So it's interesting, like, because I saw that for the first time recently. Just taking those two and then bringing it into that 9/11 context is pretty interesting.
Well, they were definitely better than Man of Steel. But I also feel like, although you like Tom Cruise, I definitely feel like Munich is better than.
Oh no, I'm not saying that it's anyway. I'm saying that it's interesting to look at Spielberg as a filmmaker. Taking his, thoughts about 9/11 and putting it into his movies. Yeah.
Well, it's nice to see you can go beyond just E.T. and Indiana Jones into serious movies too. And although I'm not sure how much I agree with the political statements he's trying to make in this movie, it is a good movie. So. Yeah.
All right. So going back to the movie, bodies are being brought back to Jerusalem, and there's I like this overlay. So you have. On one part, you have the news reading the names of the victims. Right. And on the other side, you have the Israeli government reading the names of all those involved. And there's a nice parallel because there are 11 names each.
Yep. But I was wondering if they're trying to make a political statement with that or whether it was just a juxtaposition.
I think it's a nice juxtaposition. I don't think it was necessarily that, they're equal in the sense, but it's just I thought it was a cool juxtaposition. Yeah.
So The guy watching the funeral is our main character, Avner, played by Eric Bana. And him and his wife are watching it, and his wife is like, I don't want you to get involved.
So at this point, what is his job, actually? Is this when he's doing the airports, the air marshal stuff?
So for those of you who tuned into our Microdot episode last week, we talked a little bit about Avner's positions in Mossad before the events of the movie. Christian, I can't answer that question. He was in the Mossad a little bit, and he did his jobs, and he got out.
Oh.
Because he was like, I'm raising a kid, and I have a wife, and I don't want to do it anymore. But then he got brought back. They asked him to do this, and
Okay.
He's an interesting character in the book, which we will talk about in Spy Fact versus Fiction, and his motivations are interesting. But basically, he sort of wasn't doing anything. He had a job, and he had a job with the airline. He kind of liked it, but it sort of wasn't going anywhere. So the money helped him make the decision.
Gotcha. Okay. So and then we go to the Israeli government discussing what to do with the 11 names, and there's a good quote here that I liked. Forget peace now. We have to show them we're strong. Yeah,
it's forget peace for now, which is very. I know we're going to keep up bringing up war on terror, 9/11 parallels, but this, both this. So that's a quote by Golda Meir, who is the Prime Minister of Israel all the time, and I also quote by her. We have to tell these butchers, you don't want to share this world with us, we won't share it with you. A lot of tough talk, and. Maybe if you're fired up, if you're like Daniel Craig's character, you're like, hell yeah, let's go kill him.
Right.
But it's more sad because the point the movie's trying to make is you can't kill your way out of a political problem.
Right.
And then also in this scene, I don't know if you remember it, but one of her generals points out, we have responded. We hit airstrikes on terrorist camps and killed 60 people.
Right. And the Prime Minister basically replies that no one pays attention to what's happening in the camps.
Well, on the same time, and this is war on terrorism too, is that you kill Osama bin Laden, everyone notices. You kill 60 of Osama bin Laden's followers, nobody cares because he'll just get 60 more or 600 more.
Yeah.
And that's the logic behind going after the organizers rather than just bombing people.
We have Avner, walking outside his home, and there's someone waiting for him and said, "Get in, get in the car. We're going to Jerusalem." And in the back seat is General Zamir, and Avner's like, "Oh, I remember you. You swore our unit into Mossad." And he's like, "Funny, I don't remember you, but of course, I know who your father is." And this is the first hint that we get that Avner's father is some famous hero.
Yeah, it's more prominent in the book. The whole father stuff, I didn't like.
Okay.
It's like there's enough going on in this movie. There's so much stuff, and we don't even meet the father, but they talk about him all the time. So if I were them, I would be like, cut 10 minutes off the movie, get rid of all the father stuff. It's not important. What do you think?
I mean, I guess it didn't really matter. I think it was good. I thought it was interesting just compare contrast him and his father, at least from what, in this first part that we hear about his father, that he also wasn't around when Avner was growing up. And so, Avner doesn't want to do that, but then at the same time, he has to balance that between what he thinks is right and what needs to be done for his country.
So we'll table the father stuff. I'm going to have more to talk about that.
All right. So Avner got into this meeting with the prime minister. And again, like we said in our intro quote, the chief for the Mossad, 2 generals, and a prime minister.
Yep. Golda Meir asks, "How is your father?" and serves him coffee, which I can't imagine any other head of state doing that.
And so this is where we find out that Avner used to be the bodyguard for the prime minister. And apparently he was one of her favorite bodyguards.
And he also says he used to guard tourists on El Al jets, which for those of you who are listening to the Microdot episode, he did do that.
And so they ask Avner to undertake a mission. And it's a top secret mission. He can't talk to anyone about it. May take years. Very dangerous. And so they, they don't really give him too many details at this point, but they tell him that you have, 1 day to decide whether to accept the mission, which I thought was interesting. Is, in your spy movies, it's usually like all right, you can accept this mission now, and you don't really have, time to think it over.
That's true, but he doesn't want to think about it. So you're going to be away for a long time. You won't be able to tell anybody, not even your wife. And I do like how that general's like, you have 1 day to decide. And if it takes you more than a day to decide, you won't ever be able to decide. I appreciated that.
Yeah.
And then we get introduced to Jeffrey Rush.
Playing
Ephraim,
Or Ephraim, excuse me.
He has some interesting insights about Meir. So Meir said earlier she didn't go to the athlete's funeral because her sister died. But Ephraim says she didn't go because she was afraid she would be booed by Israelis who thought that she made the wrong call about refusing to negotiate with the terrorists. So maybe she's not as tough as she appears.
And this is actually interesting because that's also not something that we really saw. We didn't like I said before. We saw it all from the the viewpoint of the newscast and people watching newscasts. So we don't see or know that Chief decided not to negotiate with the terrorists at all and anything like that. So that was just an interesting drop line to me.
Yeah. Well, it has ramifications through to today, of course. I mean, the Israelis for a long time had a no negotiate with terrorist policy, but that has changed.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. So, and then Ephraim also thinks that Avner will say yes because he didn't ask any questions about the mission.
Interesting. So then in our next scene is a sex scene. Avner and his wife lying in bed expositioning more about his parents and his background.
So it's your classic Game of Thrones sex position, as they called it, where you have a love scene, but also you have them giving out exposition. But it's like more tastefully done.
That's true. But it's like exposition that doesn't even matter because again, his parents really, I don't feel like they're that important to the story.
I mean, if you're talking about the spy story, not necessarily, but if you're talking about Avner's personal journey, then it may be more relevant.
Yep, fair enough.
Okay, let's see. So we find out that his mother abandoned him when his father was in prison, and that
she didn't.
So
She didn't abandon him.
So there are some Jewish terms here that I didn't really get. So you can explain them to me. So where did she?
She left him in a kibbutz, which is like a communal farm.
Okay, all right. Yeah,
where
I didn't know that. Yeah.
it's like a summer camp that is not just in the summer. It's like all the time.
Okay. Yeah. So that's saying that she abandoned him is harsh then.
Yeah,
On his wife's
abandoned
part.
him. You didn't like leave him on the side of the road. It's more
Because
like
that's what it sounded like to me, because I don't know what that is. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's more like sending him off to boarding school, which certainly
Okay.
people
Is
who have been
something,
sent to
yeah.
boarding school feel like they're abandoned.
Right.
I understand that he might feel like he's abandoned, but
the thing is, it's not even him saying that; it's his wife calling it that. He's trying to defend his mom. But I like this, this notion that his wife says that, because, his mother abandoned him, in her words, that Israel has taken the place of his mother in his heart.
that's like some deep psychoanalysis there.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the next scene, he accepts because we see him with Ephraim and they're preparing. Doing paperwork,
and he's told that you've resigned from Mossad, and that so that there will be no blowback on Mossad if anything goes wrong, and you've given up your pay, your benefits, and your pension, and you have a new contract to say that there is no contract.
Right. And then later he says you've signed away all your dental insurance, so take care of those teeth.
Yeah, but so he's going to get paid through a Swiss bank, and his wife will get money each month, and so will all the other members of his team from the Swiss bank. And he said there was $250,000 in there, and you take out money, and we'll replenish it
back up. Yeah,
but keep receipts.
That part was ridiculous. So there's this old guy who's like, "Bring me the receipts. You're not working for the Baron Rothschild. You're working for Israel. It's a small country." So I don't appreciate this because it brings up this stereotype about Jews and money.
I never read it as that necessarily, but I can see that stereotype being brought up. I just thought of it as more of a bureaucrat, as being like, this is a bureaucrat who's dealing with money rather than an espionage agent who's thinking should have spent all this stuff.
I mean, he's absolutely a bureaucrat.
Yeah.
But the thing is, and this is a preview for Spy Fact versus Fiction, but that dialogue is taken almost verbatim from the book. So Steven Spielberg and his scriptwriters did not just make it up.
Funny.
It was from reality. It's just unfortunate. And then also he's like, I understand you have a special job. I want those receipts as they walk out the door.
Yeah. So Avner's told that he's going to stay in Europe until all 11 names on the list are killed. Only kill them if they're in Europe, not in Arab countries, and not in the Eastern Bloc, because we don't want to piss off the Russians.
It's really just 11 men in Western Europe that you're taking on. And he says no contact, no help from headquarters.
And told to use guns if needed, but bombs are preferable.
Avner asks, why me? It's because he's not known. And he speaks German, and he's accustomed to being in Europe, which is part of his background. Ephraim says also no bellhops, no killing of civilians. It's trouble they don't need, even leaving aside the moral implications of it.
So next we get Avner on a plane to Geneva, and as he's looking out the window, we get pretty much the more extended flashback of what happened in the attack. You see it in much more brutal detail. One of the Israeli athletes gets shot in the face, and another one is killed. So it was unclear to me which ones, because a lot of them get shot at, but wasn't sure, because they say two of them were killed in their hotel room or their apartment. And I know there's one who grabs a knife to fight back and gets shot. Does the one who gets shot in the face not die? So
they're going to keep doing the flashbacks, in the TV show Arrow. They keep doing flashbacks throughout the movie. So more will be revealed on that. So I won't give it away.
Okay, all right. Because there's a little again, because we're receiving it in this fashion. I wasn't always I think. But maybe that's not as important as the emotion that Spielberg's trying to provoke from you for this point.
Yeah, exactly. Also in this scene, why is Avner sitting in the middle seat when there's two empty seats next to him?
Maybe he just doesn't want anyone. I don't know.
The mind boggles.
I mean, if you have that empty row, why not? You have more arm room both ways that way.
I wonder if in the 70s they didn't have assigned seating on planes, so you could just sort of sit wherever you felt like it, and he felt like it. He also, in this part, he takes his wedding ring off.
Oh, I didn't catch that. That's interesting. Yeah.
I think.
I saw him playing with his wedding ring, but I don't remember if he took it off or not.
He goes to Milan, Italy, and gets his money, and then he has dinner with his team.
Was it Italy or was it? I thought it was a Swiss bank.
Well, okay, I don't remember which bank he gets it from, but he eventually
Okay.
ends up in Italy. And,
Okay, yes,
that's where he meets his team.
Yeah, so we have a meeting at the team meeting at a safe house, and Avner's cooked for him. So I think this is the first hint we get that he's good at sort of cooking.
Mm-hmm.
And so Steve, who's played by Daniel Craig, apparently joined Mossad like 10 minutes ago.
And he's like ready
words.
to mess some people up. He's like, we're here to kill the guys who planned Munich, right? Let's kill him. Let's kill him. Let's kill him.
So, and then we have Robert, who makes toys and bombs.
That's right.
We have Hans, who says he like purchases sofas. So we're not really sure what his role is, but we later see that he's sort of like the accountant for the team.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Carl, who says, "I just worry," but we find out later he's like kind of a cleaner.
Not kind of a cleaner. He is a cleaner.
Yeah,
That's his job.
Yeah.
And he looks like Alfred Molina as like a horror movie villain.
Well, you know who that is.
He looked really familiar, but I didn't look him up.
So he is Mance Rayder from Game of Thrones. He's also Aberforth Dumbledore in the Harry Potter movies. And he was the bad guy from Justice League.
Okay, I remember the first one you said.
Yeah,
the Game of Thrones one. I remember the Game of Thrones one.
Yeah, his name is, what is the name? Ciaran Hinds.
He just has one of those faces where he's like super recognizable as a bad guy.
He's in a lot of stuff, yeah.
So the team they talk a little bit about how they're assassins and what that means. And this is when I sort of realized that this movie is probably the closest we've come to a real life James Bond movie.
Oh?
Well, so people have pointed out to me that James Bond does a little bit of spying, but he mostly goes out and kills other spies.
True, yeah.
So that's what they do.
Oh, okay, all right, I can see it.
Except without Suave and without gadgets, or they do have gadgets, but all of their gadgets are just bombs.
Yeah.
Okay. So then Avner meets with his friend Andreas.
Yeah.
Contact from Frankfurt.
Yeah, so that's someone apparently he kind of grew up with, hasn't spoken to in 10 years since apparently Avner found him in bed with his girlfriend.
That's right.
So they meets up with him in this like busted old mansion, looks like, with a chandelier in the middle of the place. Like, wondering like what's the deal with this place?
It's right out of like Rent.
Andreas's new girlfriend is I don't have her name down, but she's like an anarchist style. Like,
yeah, she's making this speech about like communism and revolutions and all that stuff. And Avner is like, I'll just give. Avner offers, if she's like, I'll give you money and you find me people.
Mm-hmm. And this is where he gives his cover story that he's working for some Americans who want to find these people. And
apparently they buy it, which is like ridiculous. But I do like the joke here where she's like, "You sure you work for Americans?" He's like, "Of course I work for Americans. Washington, Jefferson, Franklin." Pointing at the dollar bills as he says
who he works for. So Avner and Andreas are meeting with someone else in a cafe who can help find the names, and Avner is giving the names that he wants to look for, and Andreas is like concerned and thinks that Avner is trying to join the PLO.
You also say at this point that all the Arab terrorists aren't hiding. This was a big success for them, so they're recruiting and they're acting, and this means now is the time to try to get them. So yeah, Andreas is like, dude, this is too hot. This is too much for me. I like playing at revolutionary. I don't want to actually be one. He leaves. And the new guy, I don't think we ever learned the new guy's name, is like, I like you, you pay well, and you don't make speeches. He charges $60K per name, and one of them is waiter is here in Milan. And Avner says, I thought, okay, fine, maybe they're in Rome. I don't remember. I just know they're somewhere in Italy. Okay. So he's like, okay, I'll pay you, but I want receipts. So that joke comes back. I assume it was a joke. Like, I don't even know how you would get a receipt from like your pseudo criminal intelligence contact. I have no idea. That definitely seems like fiction to me.
Yeah. So back at the safe house, Robert draws the short straw, and so we find that means that he's going to go help Avner take out the first guys, Wiles weiter.
Yes.
And so Zweiter is in Rome. He's doing a reading. He's apparently translated the 1001 Arabian Nights into Italian. And so as he's doing this reading, Steve is in the car nearby with a girl. And this was unclear to me. Is the girl repeating what Zweiter's saying because he can't hear it? Or what's she saying?
No, this is great. She's talking. She's just talking. And when she stops talking, Steve is like, keep talking, keep talking.
Right.
And the idea
is just cover. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that was unclear because it looked like she was like reading his lips or something, saying what he's saying, but I wasn't really clear. Okay.
Yeah, because they were both talking at the same time, but the idea is like 2 people in a car is less suspicious than 1 guy in a car.
Just watching. Okay, that makes sense. Okay. So as Zweiter leaves, Steve follows, and the rest of the team is nearby. And Zweiter uses a phone in a grocery store, and Carl is watching him as he, goes home. And then Avner and Robert sneak into Zweiter's apartment before he gets there. And as he's about to get into the elevator, they get them at gunpoint.
Yes. And this scene was like a David Lynchian like horror movie. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, this whole part, like when he's calling using the phone, and then it cuts to Carl like staring at him through the window.
There's a lot of good tension in there that's building. Yeah.
Yeah. So then when they come down the stairs and like it's all in shadow, that felt very like surreal to me.
Yeah. They ask him if he is Zweiter, and do you know why we're here? And he's like speaking to them in German. We don't get a translation of what he's saying in German. And they ask questions again. And Robert's like, "What do we do?" And then he's like, and Avner in this moment is like panicking, and Robert just starts shooting, and so they both shoot him.
Yeah. So a couple of things about this. Based on my reading, this is the first time that Avner killed somebody.
That makes sense, and that's how I read it too. Like the fact, or at least in this sort of scenario, he may have, as a soldier, he may have shot people from a distance or something like that. But in this sort of cold blood scenario, this is probably the first time he did that. Also,
when they pull their guns, it's really slow. Dave, their American traitor that we talked about in the Micro episode, would be very disappointed. They take a sweet eternity to pull their guns. And Avner asked him twice, "Are you Wiles Waiter?" And Robert's like, "You already asked him that. You already asked that. You already said yes, and we gotta shoot him."
They leave, and this getaway car that Steve's driving, and then Carl comes in and cleans up, gets the bullet shells.
Like I don't even understand how that worked, because the shell was like in the middle of like this blood and milk pool. I'm like, how did he like reach all the way over to get it? I don't know. But so also,
there's more. I think again, like many things in this movie, it's more about atmosphere and feeling than it is about the actual thing.
That's fair. So also, when they make the escape, they like sprint to the car, which I thought was interesting, and then they get in there like, we shot it 8 times, and it reminded me of Michael Collins giving his people grief for riddling their targets full of bullets.
Right.
But in this case, they can afford it.
Okay. So they all meet up later at a cafe, and they're sort of celebrating their first mission. Avner and Carl are a little more hesitant to celebrate necessarily, but Steve, being Steve, is all very gung-ho about celebrating. He pulls up Roberts, dancing with him.
Yeah, they dance to My Girl by the Temptations in Italian over the radio. While Carl is talking about, and this is like another stereotype about Jews, is that we constantly bring up things from the Bible, like at the drop of a hat. But he brings up the Exodus story and how God chastised the angels for celebrating the deaths of Egyptians. To which Avner says, yes, but they were celebrating because the message was delivered not to mess with the Jews. In the words of Daniel Craig.
I will say, I really watching this again. I really appreciated Daniel Craig brought just a humor into it that wasn't necessarily there with the other characters.
Well, certainly he's not like down in the dumps all the time.
Yeah.
But he came off as more like scary than funny.
Okay, maybe
he's like always going for a fight.
True. Yeah.
But maybe that's just me approaching the movie with too much seriousness rather than just trying to approach with like a level attitude.
Yeah, this is where we meet. We go to Paris and we meet Louis, who's played by Matthew Almeric, who is in Quantum of Solace as the bad guy, a Daniel Craig James Bond film. So like as soon as I saw him and I heard that, I was like, he's Dominic Green, and I was wondering, and I don't know. I've only seen the first part of this so far, so I don't know if Daniel Craig ever get a scene together.
I don't think so.
Nah, pity.
Though, the only thing I remember about Quantum of Solace is the part where James Bond makes him drink oil.
Yep, which is like at the very end of that. Apparently, Louis can provide information about about the names. Says he can locate pretty much anyone, and as they're talking, they're like shopping in a market that's like right near the Eiffel Tower.
Right.
Nodding towards that, apparently how Avner is good at cooking.
So there's also a part here where Louis is like, a Frenchman and a Jew will be negotiating forever. To which Avner says, I'm not a Jew. Which I thought was interesting, because it means he's traveling undercover. And then later we learn he's using some other name. Yeah.
So apparently Louis, his organization, they say they don't work with governments.
Right.
And so he wants to make sure that Avner is not representing a government or anything. They work with people who are non-government.
Right. Which is like, I still can't believe that these guys are buying that Avner doesn't actually work for Israel. but whatever. Okay. So he's like, it's not just his group, it's his family, he says.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So meanwhile, there's another hijacking of a plane that results in the surviving terrorists from the Munich Massacre being released.
Mm-hmm.
And they're brought home to a hero's welcome in Tripoli, Libya. And Steve makes a crack. They don't have any qualms about rejoicing, in reference to the previous scene where they were rejoicing about the death of Zwader.
And Steve wants to go to Tripoli to go after these guys, and Avner replies that they went to Arab countries and they stick to the names on the list.
We also have a part, this is maybe a little more political we want to get into, but they interview one of the terrorists. He says, we've made our voice heard, and we cut to Ham Shari, which is one of the names on the list, kind of mansplaining. Well, what he means is that people are listening to us now, but we don't condone attacks on civilians.
Yes, and so Hamshari is talking to Robert, and he's interviewing Hamshari, and he goes and he says, "Can I use your phone? I need to call my editor." And as he goes over to the phone, he's like tracing the outline of it, looking at the specs on the bottom.
Yep.
And Hamshari's daughter comes in and starts playing the piano.
So this is such a move from Robert. It's awesome because he gets to know like the layout. He finds where the phone is, what kinds of phones. But that's something that they talk about in the book is that, so there's two ways to hide if you're a terrorist. And one is you like literally hide. Like Osama bin Laden hides in a compound in Abbottabad for 20 years. The other way is you hide in plain sight where you just pretend you have like a cover as like in this case like a spokesperson for the PLO, and it's not knowledge that you work with terrorist organizations. But the downside of that is that if he doesn't have any bodyguards, he barely even has like a lock on his door. So once they come for him, he doesn't have a lot in the way of defenses. Yeah.
So we see Carl sneak into the house with Robert and Avner, and they plant a bomb into the phone. So they have a little transmitter. A green light will go on once the phone is picked up, and then they can activate the bomb.
First of all, they like plant the explosive in the phone, and then they like stand there and have a conversation about two topics. The first is like how the phone bomb works, which we as the audience need to know.
Yeah.
And then second of all, they're like, is this really the right thing to do? Like, does this guy really deserve to die? And someone's like, well, he organizes terrorism. And someone's like, well, is organizing enough? And then they're like, well, what about evidence? And he's like, well, talk to headquarters if that's what you want. Well, meanwhile,
that's right, yeah.
But I'm like, don't have this. Why are you having this conversation here?
It's probably for expediency because they don't want to have Spielberg doesn't want to have to film, cut to another scene where they would have had this. So it's a screenwriting cheat basically.
I know, this is so funny. That is like, can you imagine if the guy came back while they were like just standing there having this inane conversation? Okay. Yeah. So they explain that, and then it's time to actually make the attempt.
So we have the wife and the daughter leaving the apartment, and Carl is calling the phone bomb from a payphone.
Yes.
And a truck pulls up right as they're about to start. Like he's already dialed the phone, and a truck pulls up between the car and the apartment. So Avner like gives Carl the signal with his hat. No, don't go through it yet. Carl hangs up, And Avner's worried that the truck is gonna block the signal, so he runs over to the car. Which bad operational security, because then you're giving away that you know these people. So if anyone who is looking for you would see that.
Yeah, it's like, what are you doing? You're like hanging around on the corner, run over to the car, run back, hang around some more.
So he's worried, but then like Robert reassures him, no, this is it's enough. It'll be fine. It's a very strong transmitter. But as this is happening, they don't notice that the daughter goes back into the house.
Yep.
And so Avner goes back to his post. He gives the signal, and Carl calls the phone, and the daughter picks up the phone. And so Carl, as soon as he hears the daughter's voice, his face goes white. He like hangs up the phone, and I think, what does Avner see the daughter in the window?
I think he sees Carl running.
Oh,
and puts two and two together.
Okay, yeah.
So this one was in all the previews for the movie. This was in like all the trailers.
Okay.
This part, yeah.
And as this is happening, Robert's right about to put the key into the transmitter and press it, and they stop him just in time. And it's like, this is very tension-filled. I was like, oh god, they're gonna kill the daughter, aren't they?
Nah, unfortunately, even Spielberg wasn't willing to go that far this time. It reminded me of the part in American Sniper, the trailer in the American Sniper, when he like has the kid in his gun sights. I didn't actually see the movie.
I never saw it, no.
But the trailer reminds me of the same thing. But also, it's like, you'd think this would be avoidable because the telephone's in front of a window. Just get someone across the street with binoculars and be like, yup, it's him. Let's kill him. Click.
Well, and this will come into it later on.
Right.
In the next attempt. So they do it again. Which I'm surprised, like, no one else has noticed these two guys, like you said, running back and forth between this car.
People don't notice stuff, especially in Europe where they, like, mind their own business.
So they do it again. He's, make sure the daughter's out of the house, blow the place. But
and this time it works great.
Yeah, well, almost great. So we hear from Carl that Hamshar is in the hospital. They're not sure how injured he is. And we find out there have been reprisals in the Israeli embassy in London and in Israel itself.
So there's a couple good quotes here where Avner is like, so shooting people kills them, but bombs terrify them. Wah, wah, wah. 9/11 parallel. We're the same as the terrorists. Think about it, man. But then also, I think it's Carl is like, now we have a dialogue. We blow up them, they blow up us. And it goes all over Europe.
Find out Avner's on the phone with Carl. Carl's like, where are you? And I'm in New York. I'm following the lead.
Yep.
And then we cut to Avner's back in Israel, actually, and his wife's giving birth.
Yes.
And his mother is there and is talking, and they have more discussions about his father.
Right.
And then we see, his wife has given birth. He's holding his daughter. And says that, I've set up a place for you in Brooklyn because I don't know when the next time I'm going to be able to come back to Israel is.
And his wife is like not having it.
And that's really the end of the discussion. We don't actually find out if she goes to Brooklyn or not, at least in this scene. We don't find out.
Yeah, I should say that for the purposes of this episode, we're only covering the first half. So we only watched the first half of the movie. So don't give anything away.
So then we go to tracking Hussein Al-Chir, who's in Cyprus.
Yes.
And he's working with he's the KGB contact for Black September, rather.
Yes.
And so Robert designs a bomb that's supposed to go off when Al-Chir gets in bed.
So you know what this reminded me of?
What's that?
MacGyver.
All right.
Did you ever watch a lot of MacGyver?
I watched some, yeah.
The old one, of course, not that new one. So I didn't watch a lot of it, but I did watch one episode where apparently he has an arch enemy.
Oh, okay.
MacGyver does. Who's like evil MacGyver. And I don't remember the arch enemy's name, but there's a part where he rigs a bed to explode.
Huh. Okay.
But it's not like this. It's more like it's just like a usual pressure bomb that will go off. So MacGyver like sits on it and hears the click. And then has to figure out how to get out of it. I won't tell you how he gets out of it. But he's like, who rigs a bomb or bed to explode? What kind of diabolical person would do that? So it reminds me of this.
Because they don't want the same thing to happen as the last time, Avner checks into the room next door to make sure the target is actually in bed. There's no one else there.
We also have a good part where Steve and Robert are in a car outside the hotel, and Steve is singing "Papa Was a Rolling Stone," and then Robert's like, "Shut up, Steve."
Yeah, so that night, the KGB drops off Alchir, and Avner's on the balcony,
Hmm.
and he sort of makes eye contact with the newlyweds who are like next door to the target's to Alchir's room,
Yes.
and
And
ends up actually chatting with Alchir.
well, the newlyweds aren't just newlyweds. They're one of them's an Israeli.
Yeah, that's right.
Actually,
Yeah.
they might both be Israelis, which doesn't help. And
Oh,
then,
well, I think it was like they said it was like a mixed marriage, and that's why they were getting married in Cyprus.
well, it's a mixed religious marriage. They could
Oh,
both be
gotcha.
Israeli citizens. I
True, true.
wasn't paying close enough attention to remember.
Yeah.
So, but while he's talking to Alchir, that same couple like slams
They are
into
going
the
at
wall
it.
because they're going at it. But in the background, if you notice, Avner like jumps.
Oh,
He like
I
jumps
didn't even see
across the
that.
balcony. Yeah, which I like that. It's like a detail. It shows that he's jumpy.
Right. Yeah, I mean, because he's about to blow this guy up.
Yes.
And as they're chatting, basically says, "Hope you are a deep sleeper because these two are going to be going at it for hours."
Right. And then also, Alchir is like, don't expect to get any sleep tonight.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, what if he doesn't sleep? Because they need him to sleep because his bed is what's going to be used to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, he gets in his bed.
So this was a little unclear to me. How does Avner know that he's in bed? Because he looks like he's not out on the balcony watching.
The short answer is that he doesn't. So Avner sees him, take his shoes off, gets into bed, turns the light off, and then Avner goes into his room, waits for like 45 seconds, then turns his light off, which is the signal to detonate.
See, because we get that shot of Alchir going into his bed. So I had to rewind this. I was like, wait, did they install like a one-way glass mirror into this room? How did he know?
No,
so it wasn't clear to me. Okay.
Yeah, nothing that advanced, just a little bit of guesswork.
Okay, so Avner turns off the light, which is the signal to Robert. So the green light on their transmitter has already gone on, so the bomb is triggered, and then they can blow the switch. And when the bomb goes off, it goes off. And Avner's knocked to the ground. The newlyweds knocked door are blinded. Part of like the ceiling has collapsed.
Both walls in both directions are blown out. And it's like crazy. So Carl goes running in to get Avner out, and that's
Avner
all he
goes
does.
to rescue the two newlyweds who are like blinded. They try to get to the exit somewhere, and they just get out of there.
But they do make as clean a getaway as they could under the circumstances.
Yeah.
And Robert explains that it's not his fault that the bomb was so powerful. Someone changed the markings on the components that he used to make the bomb.
And this is where we find out that apparently Louis has provided the explosives. And they're like, why are we trusting Louis with all this? And they realize as they're having this discussion, wait, whose fishing boat is this?
It's
Louis. It was
Louis.
arranged by Louis, yeah.
Yep. And they make the point that they really don't know Louis at all.
And they don't know who. They don't know, basically, why are they trusting him with all this stuff?
Yeah. So then in the next scene, Avner confronts Louis about it. Louis with his dog.
Yeah.
Louis denies that. He's like, maybe the problem's with your bomb maker. He also calls Avner Mr. Smooch or Smutch or something.
I didn't catch that, no.
He calls him a name.
Okay. Oh, as in like his cover name.
Like a cover name that was like some weird kind of Germanic.
I thought it was like a weird nickname.
Nope. No, it's just a name, but it's like an explanation would have been nice. But whatever.
Well, I think there was like a brief, and it's if you miss it, you don't really get it. It's like whoever was making the introduction to Louis is like, what should I call you today? And then it was like Avner gives whatever that name was. But I didn't catch what the name was.
Yeah, it's quick. So Louis is like, don't work for government and don't lie to me or I'll be very upset.
He gives Avner 3 more names: Kamal Adwan, Kamal Nasser, and Abu Yusuf, and says that they're all in Beirut. And so we have a scene where the team is meeting with Ephraim. Steve is like, Abu Yusuf is like number 3 in the Palestinian leadership. We need to go after these guys. And Ephraim's like, no, stay out of Arab countries. The army will take care of it.
But then Avner is like, but if the army goes after him, then our contact will know that we told you about him and they won't work with us again. So it's a real conundrum.
Yeah, so there's a negotiation, and basically Ephraim wants to know who their source is, and Avner won't tell him. And it says, all right, let us go to Beirut, and we'll get all the rest of the names, and then we'll tell you who he is.
There was a funny part here where Ephraim's like, Avner, I order you to tell me who it is. And I think it's Carl's like, you can't order him to do anything. He doesn't work for you.
And
says,
Avner's like, I work for a box, a Swiss box.
Yeah. It's like, you want that box to keep filling up with money, you'll do what I say. So that was like kind of a crazy scene.
So they didn't really like resolve what their deal is, at least not in this moment. But then we cut to the dock in Beirut. There's all these commandos who are arriving by speedboat. And you see Avner, Steve, and Robert are there waiting for them. The commandos get changed from their wetsuits, and a few of them put on women's clothing.
There's also a quick part here where there's this guy who looks really familiar. Maybe I can find him on IMDb. He like introduces himself to Avner in this like throwaway scene because we never see him again. But he introduces himself as Ehud Barak.
Okay.
Ehud Barak went on to become Prime Minister of Israel in
I did not know
the early 2000s.
Whoa. Yes. Wow. Wonder if that's accurate.
Wait, that they actually met each other?
Yeah.
Could be.
And that he took part in this.
Okay.
So
someone's like, this is a lot of effort just to shoot 3 guys.
Steve.
Yes.
Steve's the one who says that.
Of course he does. He loves talking about shooting people.
Yeah. And so the ones who are wearing women's clothing are go into the compound first, like just to distract the soldiers. And once like they get close enough to realize that they're men in women's clothing, they shoot the guards. Everyone else gets into the compound following them. And there's this crazy shootout throughout the compound. Kill like one of them who's underneath a door. Like they can't find him in the room, so he's underneath the door, and they shoot him. Yeah,
they don't just kill them. They like pull the door off him, and the guy just lies there. They hold up a picture, he shoots him, and then they just shoot him. Like all 3 of the guys are unarmed, and they just mow them down.
Yeah, and then they even killed one of them, his wife, because they were like right next to him.
Yeah, remember that. It'll come up later.
Okay. And they're about to kill the son who's coming up to them too, and like Avner stops him from killing the son. Yeah.
By the way, Avner's hat in this scene is ridiculous.
Is it a hat? I thought it was like a bandana thing, or
it's whatever it is that's on top of his head is really stupid looking, in my opinion. But yeah, so he tells them to leave the kid alone, and they all got to get out of there. But then these other militants, people with guns, gunmen, we'll call them, show up, and there's this like epic gun battle. Outside of the compound. There's a part where Avner and his team ambush the bad guys and shoot them from behind, so they're caught in crossfire, and they just take them out and escape.
Yeah, so, and after they escape, Louis meets up with Avner again, and Avner's telling him, I wasn't in Beirut. And he's like, yes, but apparently the Israeli army was, or so every major newspaper tells me.
So this part doesn't make any sense.
No?
So he's like, the Israeli army's there. He very clearly doesn't believe Avner when he says that Avner doesn't work for government. But he's like, but come meet my papa and the rest of the family anyway.
I think it's supposed to be more of a threat. Like, it's more of a threat. My father wants to meet you. And this is where we find out that apparently Louis is not in charge of this operation or his family operation. It's his father who's like, everyone reports to someone. Basically.
Everyone reports to someone. That's true.
Yeah. So he gets brought to and he's blindfolded when he gets in the car, and like he almost doesn't get in the car. Actually, is to run after the car for a little bit. Yeah. So he gets brought to this mansion in the French countryside. He's brought in, and like it's this whole family affair basically.
There's like at least 10 kids there,
and grandkids.
Yes.
And we find that Papa is played by Michael Lonsdale, who is Hugo Drax in Moonraker, which means that a Bond villain is the son of another Bond villain. So I'm like, as soon as I heard that voice, I'm like, holy crap, that's Hugo Drax.
I mean, it's got to be intentional.
Maybe not intentional, but
I meant the Hugo Drax guy. But I guess that actor's probably been in a bunch of stuff, right?
He's a French actor, yeah.
Yeah, so. But he definitely looked familiar to me, but I couldn't place from where.
But yeah, so we find out that, this is all to do with Avner's cooking skills. And so Papa, because we don't really find out what his name is, he's just known as Papa.
Right.
So that's how I keep referring to him. Asks Avner to help him cook. And they're really talking more about food than intel at this point.
Yes.
So they're all, gathering grapes and everything else. And we find out later that apparently, so they all sit down to dinner, and we find out that Papa was blew up trains during the war, and we get how this thing about how the Vichy were replaced by the Gaullists and the Nazis were replaced by the Americans. They're all the same, and he doesn't trust governments.
Yeah, and then I guess she's like his daughter is like, not another war story. We also, just going back to the cooking scene, there's a part where Papa says to Avner, "We're similar. We have butcher's hands, but gentle souls." So I'm like, I'm not sure how gentle Avner's soul is, but that's for
or
maybe
necessarily
someone else
how
to
gentle
decide.
Papa's soul is, really.
Ain't that the truth?
Yeah. So we felt like we have, they're sitting down to this big dinner, and Papa asks Louis to say grace, and Louis, his prayer, actually first Louis is like, why doesn't our guest say grace? And you see Avner start to do the sign of the cross very awkwardly, which I thought was amusing since he's a Jew.
Yeah, I mean, well, I thought maybe he might get found out because he might reveal that he doesn't know how to say grace.
But then Papa's like, no, Louis, you say grace. And he says this ridiculous prayer about how give us good customers who obey contracts and understand the meaning of deals and everything. And then
it's like something out of the Ferengi religion.
Louis' mom is like pissed off, saying, I will not have my grandchildren hearing this blasphemy. And you get this whole back and forth between Louis and Papa and like Louis' sister, I think it was. So
family dinners are so awkward, especially when you're a guest at one.
And especially when that family is dealing illegally in intelligence.
Yep.
When it comes down to is Papa sympathizes with Avner as someone who understands the meaning of contract, but also understands that this is what needs to be done to support your family. And so it says that you continue working together, but no more infractions. Basically, it seems like just to piss off Louis even more as they're getting in the car. He says to Avner, you could have been my son. And you just get this close-up on Louis, like looking pissed off. He's like, but you're not my son. Remember that. We'll do business, but you aren't family.
Yeah, I don't even know why you had to do that. Why do you need to go there?
To put Louis in his place, because Louis is getting all these heirs around him, basically.
That's true. So Avner says, I still want Salome. It sounds like salami.
Yeah.
Salame. I think it's
Ali Hassan Salame.
Yeah. Louis says he's untouchable, but I'll give you Black September's KGB contact, who's much tougher than his predecessor.
Mm-hmm. Because the new contact is Zayed Muchasi. Yeah, so we find out this is the person who replaced Alchir.
Yes.
As the KGB contact.
And he's much tougher and more hardline, which again goes back to the movie, what the movie's trying to get at with the whole war on terror thing is that, okay, yeah, you kill a terrorist in the short term, but what if the guy
someone else? Yeah.
Even worse, right.
As this is happening, apparently the guy is in Athens, so he asks Louis for a safe house in Athens. And that is where we end with part 1.
Yes. The explosions are mostly over. Now it's time for the slow part of the movie.
All right, so shall we go into spy fact versus spy fiction?
Yeah, so I have a lot of spy fact versus
fiction. All right, take us into it.
And so you better buckle up. And here's a brief warning. This is a little bit of there's a little bit of violence in this part. I mean, we've had plenty of violence so far, but this gets kind of ugly. So our source, as always, is Vengeance, the True Story of an Israeli Counterterrorism Team by George Jonas. Mm-hmm. And it even says on the front of the book, the inspiration for Steven Spielberg's Munich. So presumably the screenwriter used this book as a reference. So we already talked about that accountant. Mm-hmm. It led me to think that they were probably reading this. Okay, so here we go. So during the invasion of the Olympic Village, wrestling coach Moshe Weinberger punched out a terrorist and knocked him unconscious before being shot in the face. Ooh. So that was the guy who got shot in the face.
Okay.
Not only did he hit a terrorist, but he knocked him out cold. Mm-hmm. So then, you remember the part where the terrorists were shooting at a guy and he was running, an athlete while he was running away and he got away? So in real life, while he was shooting, Weinberger punched another one in the face, fractured his mandible, knocked him out. But then the terrorist shot him several times in the chest and killed him.
Wow.
So this is the ugly one. So do you remember the guy with the mutton chops who got a knife?
Mm-hmm.
He could have gone out the window, but he got a knife and came back. So his name was Joseph Romano, as in Ray Romano. No relation as far as I know. But it said he stabbed a terrorist in the forehead, but didn't kill him, I don't think.
Oh, okay.
So
I wasn't sure
he
about
stabbed him in
that.
the forehead with a knife, and then another one shot him with a full AK-47 burst at close range.
Oh.
And then when rescue workers removed Romano's body the next day, it came apart at the waist.
Oh.
AK-47s are known to be able to do that. Hence the warning from before.
I see. Ouch.
That's ugly. Okay, and then, but that's it for the extreme violence from now on. So,
okay.
So then after the massacre, there was a remembrance ceremony in the Olympic Village, and one involved lowering the flags of all countries to half-mast for one afternoon. But that is until 10 Arab countries protested and the Germans obediently returned their flags to the top of the poles. Nice guys. Both Israelis and Palestinians noticed that the world hurried back to the Olympic Games pretty much before the blood had even dried.
Huh. I actually was wondering about that. Like, did that just put a halt to the Olympics, or did that just sort of happen and people mourned and then it went on?
It went on. Like the games kept going. They didn't cancel them. There you go. Here's a longer quote from the accountant, who is quite a character in the book. I want receipts for every penny you spend on duty. You have to take a taxi, fine. You bring me a receipt. And if you take a taxi, you had better need it for the job, because I'll ask you why you took it. When you can take the subway, take the subway. Take the bus like everybody else, or walk. You spend money. If I'm not satisfied you needed it for the job, I take it off your pay. Don't misunderstand me. You need it for the job, take it. Your job is special. You are not. By me, you're not a hero, whatever you do. You bring Hitler in here in handcuffs, I'll say, where are the receipts? And was the long distance call private to your girlfriend? Because it comes off your pay if it was. I say this because some of you guys think you're working for the Baron Rothschild. You're working for Israel. And when it comes to money, you're working for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, if that whole thing had been in the movie, that might have gone for my favorite quote.
I know, right? He's crazy. But I'm like, does he say that to every single agent that he...
Probably. This is probably his, because, I mean, he's an accountant, so he doesn't necessarily go out of the field or do anything else. This is his shining moment, so he has this whole speech prepared for every single off-the-books operation. And
I'm like, how could they get receipts for, all of the crazy stuff that they do?
Probably just write down, it's at least a record of what it is that they're spending it on, and so... I mean, they can always, because it's a handwritten receipt, they can always doctor it, but still. Can you imagine, James Bond or
Ethan Hunt being like, I need a receipt for that? Half of the times when they're eating something, the bad guy runs away and they have to go chase him.
That's true.
Avner makes a joke that if enemy spies wanted to find Mossad agents, they just have to look for whoever picks up receipts at the end of the day.
I like it.
So Wiles Wader, the poet, the guy who translated 1001 Nights. So according to the book, and the book is I know we say fact versus fiction, but as I mentioned in the Microdot episode, who knows what's the truth?
Right.
Mossad had reason to believe that Zweig was one of the major coordinators of terrorism and organizers in Europe. They claim he was the man responsible for a hijacking in 1968, tried to blow up another El Al plane in 1972. The movie doesn't mention this. You decide whether or not you believe the Mossad at their word. Ephraim makes a political statement, sort of, at one point. He says, you're not going to hit a person because he thinks Palestinians should have a home. Hell, I think the Palestinians should have a home. You hit him because he blows up school children or Olympic athletes.
All right.
So Ephraim comes across as kind of a hardliner in the movie, but in the book, he's a little bit more reasonable. Now, here are some deviations from the movie. In real life, the hits go really well. So when they take out Hamshari, they don't almost blow up his daughter.
Oh, okay.
That is not
a Spielberg fictionalization.
Yes. Okay. They watched him. They watched his family leave. They watched his mistress show up. They watched his mistress leave.
Of course.
Yes. He kept a schedule, including the mistress. And then, so they were able to hit him. The bomb is not as big as it's depicted in the movie. Avner described as shimmering of air along the wall and then patterns of cracks on the window panes. A few people were like, what's up?
Huh, but not like the shattering of the glass.
Yeah, it's not like this whole thing. So then same thing with Alchir, the guy with the trapped bomb and the bed. The bomb is bigger. George described it as a tremendous explosion, but it didn't take out the walls, and Avner didn't almost die. He wasn't. I don't think he was even in the hotel. They just hit it and then drove away.
Okay.
So let's talk about what's called this Le Groupe. Louis people and stuff.
Mhm.
So first of all, they did basically everything for the Mossad agents. They got them their guns,
Really?
they got them their bombs, they got them the places to live, they got them their
Uh-huh.
cars. They were like completely dependent on the group to do everything.
And they didn't really know who they were.
That's right.
That is terrifying.
Well, it's the nature of like undercover underworld work. I mean,
I guess.
maybe they could have functioned without the group, but it would have taken them a lot longer. They might not have succeeded.
True.
But basically, they just gave the group money, and the group gave them whatever they wanted. And the way that the group operates, so Avner makes the point that agents, it's not like in movies where they like go skiing. They don't travel by skiing or by hiking. They travel on airlines, they travel on trains, they travel on ships. They use normal ways to get around.
Right.
They don't like fight their way or sneak across the border typically. But because they use these methods of transportation, there are always people there. So like porters, customs agents, travel agents, flight attendants. So once you know that agents tend to go to a few major cities, you just pay people. It's like, hey, is there a known foreigner coming to stay in this hotel? Tell me who he is. Get send me a picture of him. So that's what the group does.
Okay.
And their motivation is that they don't really want terrorists or secret agents running around Europe killing each other. But their logic is that the sooner that they kill each other, the sooner they'll stop killing each other. So we're going to help them kill each other. And that way it'll be over soon.
Except they'll just replace one person with another.
I'm not saying I agree with their logic. I'm just saying that's the logic.
I know. I'm just arguing with it. That's like, yeah.
Okay.
Because they even point out that exact thing in the movie.
Right. But it is true that they weren't ideological. They're as happy to help a Mossad agent as they are a PLO guy. Which,
and this is like, just to go into, this is not my favorite quote, but I like one of his quotes, is Louis' quote, where is it? We are ideologically promiscuous. We love everyone, we hate everyone. I get my feelings confused. And it's funny, when I heard him say this, he makes a really similar speech in Quantum of Solace.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Let me see if I can find it quickly. Oh, here we go. You should know something about me and the people I work with. We deal with the left or the right, with dictators or liberals. If the current president had been more agreeable, I wouldn't be talking to you. I'm like, whoa, yeah. So when I heard Louis say that line, and he doesn't change his voice or anything, he looks exactly the same. I'm like, ooh, this definitely had to have gotten that role.
Maybe. Okay, so I just have a couple of things. So first, this is a heavy topic, but while he's flying into Europe, Avner has a thought, which I will share. He says, Europe, where Jews may have fitted, but couldn't live without being massacred once or twice every century, and the last time very nearly for good. So if Europeans were now unhappy about Israelis and Arabs turning their great cities into battlegrounds, that was unfortunate. They should have worried about it earlier.
Wow.
The movie reminded me of this because you have like Rome, which is like this peaceful city, and it's getting bombed. I mean, the Israelis and Arabs weren't the only ones bombing it in the 1970s. There were plenty of anarchists and right-wing groups and so on. Right. But it's still interesting that it's like the secret war taking place in Europe.
Yeah. Wow.
Avner did sneak into Israel to see his child being born. That's true. Okay.
Oh, okay, cool.
Okay, yeah. Last thing. So in the meeting with Papa, the leader of the group, he told Avner these things that Avner couldn't believe he believed it, because it's things right out of Hollywood movies. Like Papa actually believed that there were mysterious individuals hiding out somewhere plotting to take over the world.
Wow.
Yeah, I think they left that part out of the movie.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things where it's like, if you put in that movie, it would sound like it's a Hollywood line, but it's not.
I mean, I guess it makes total sense that a guy who's part of a secret organization would believe that there were other secret organizations even more powerful than his own.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is it for spy fact versus fiction.
And so we're going to hold off on doing our ratings until next segment, just because we want to do a rating of the whole movie, not of just this part.
That's correct. Do you have a favorite quote from the first half of the movie?
I do. It's from Ephraim. We deposit money from a fund that doesn't exist into a box we don't know about in a bank we've never set foot in. We can't help you because we've never heard of you before. Nice.
Okay, and mine is, and we're going to bring this joke back one last time.
All right.
My favorite quote is, I want receipts. I mean, I have a lot of other good quotes too, but they already came up in the episode, so no need to repeat them. I should have saved them. Well, that was good. Nice job, Christian. I enjoyed that one. And so that is it for Munich Part 1. We will see you in 2 weeks for Munich Part 2.
You can find us on social media at the Spy-Fi Guys on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Until next time, I'm Christian.
And I'm Zach.
And we are the Spy-Fi Guys, signing off. Thank you for listening to the Spy-Fi Guys. If you enjoyed our podcast, please be sure to give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. The theme song from this podcast is Mistake the Getaway by Kevin MacLeod from Incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. Films, books, and television shows reviewed by our podcast are the intellectual property of their respective copyright holders, and no infringement is intended.
This is a personal podcast. Any views, statements, or opinions expressed in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the participants. They do not represent those of people, institutions, or organizations that the participants may or may not be associated with in a professional or personal capacity unless explicitly stated. Any views or opinions are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, or individual.
You can find our podcast on social media at The Spy-Fi Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.